Welcome to the Derek Loudermilk Show. This is episode 406 with Boris Kester. Boris Kester has been to every country in the world, and he wrote a book about it. The book, The Long Road to Colville, won Best Travel Book in 2023, and after I read the book, I knew that I had to have him on the show. His approach to travel and adventure and life is very unique. He's an incredible storyteller, and I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Boris, sharing many of his travel and adventure tales. So without further ado, here is Boris Kester. Boris Kester, welcome to the show. Good to meet you.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation. I listened to a few of your podcasts, which cover various topics. So thanks for having me, Derek.
Yeah, thank you. And I got to read through your book, Long Road to Colville, just won at least one award that I'm aware of. So congrats on that. That was the
Thank you.
Nomadtopia award, or what was the
Nomad Mania? Yeah,
Nomad Mania?
They have Nomad. So Nomad Mania is for your listeners. It's organization for, as we call them, extreme travelers. So people traveling to many countries and to really remote places where most people wouldn't even think of traveling to. And they do travel awards every year for various categories of travelers. And this year, for the first time, they had a travel book award as well. And my book was one of the six nominees, and I was super happy to be the winner of the travel book award. So I can now say that my book is an award-winning
That's
travel
amazing.
book.
And
Yeah, thank you.
I worked my way through the National Geographic 100 best adventure books list. So I would say that I am qualified to be an expert on adventure books, and it's really good. So I just want to, yeah.
Thank you. Well, and I don't think my book made it to that list yet. So I
That
don't
would,
know how it
well, that,
works. Maybe I should apply. Or
yeah, maybe try to bump someone off. Be like, hey, I think I should have this
yeah,
spot.
yeah, exactly.
Coming in right about number 70. So yeah, there's some fantastic stories from the book. Of course, you've been traveling for quite some time. Where are you now?
I'm right now. I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa. Just a couple of days for work. So it's really good to be here. It's nice and sunny during the day, and it's a good chat. I was in my home country, Netherlands, for a day. I just came back from Kazakhstan a few days ago, where it was sunny, but it was already pretty cold. In my country, it was gray, rainy, and cold, and here it's sunny and warm. So I'm I'm just enjoying the feeling the warmth of the sun, which is I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, I think I saw on your social media you celebrated your birthday there.
In Kazakhstan, yes, yeah, that's correct. That's like what's that? A week, just over a week ago. Yeah.
Kazakhstan. I mean, everyone knows that from Borat mostly. Um,
Forget Borat. Of course it's funny. It's you can laugh at it, but no, Kazakhstan actually it's a amazing country, and it's huge. It's I think it's bigger than Western Europe.
wow.
And just to give you an idea, we took several domestic flights, and it's pretty easy to have a 3 hour plus domestic flight, and you're still in the same country. So, which in the US is pretty normal, but in Europe, I can't think of any country in Europe which has 3 hour plus domestic flights. So, just to give you an idea of the size of the country, and it has like various landscapes, desert, Caspian Sea, high mountains, mountain lakes, canyons. They're actually running a very interesting ad where you see images of Kazakhstan, and then they say, no, it's not Norway. No, it's not United States. No, it's not. And they show like a canyon and mountain lakes, and you really think like, oh, this could be Switzerland. Oh, this could be Grand Canyon. And then they say, no, it's Kazakhstan. But it's yeah, I and it's too big to. We were there for like 10 days, and we only saw so much of it. So there's way more to discover. Obviously, I've been before several times, but I've only made it to the southern part of Kazakhstan and the capital city, Nur Sultan. But there's way more regions to discover yet. So, but it's always good to leave something for the future.
Yeah, so obviously you've been to every country and you chose to go back to Kazakhstan. How do you, yeah, how do you choose since you've sort of tasted them all now, which ones you go back to?
I have a long list of places I want to go back to, and that would mostly be parts of countries I have been to, but like Kazakhstan, I'd been to Almaty and Nur-Sultan, and now I went to completely different areas of the country. I did fly into Almaty because it's one of the well the main gateways to Kazakhstan, but so and there's like this, there's a lot of countries where I've been to parts of it, but I mean, even my own country is a small country, but there's still a few parts that I haven't seen. So there's always more to see. So what I'm working on now is I don't really follow any list anymore for travel. So I really just follow my heart and whatever I like, I go there. I just came back from Papua New Guinea a few months ago, which is one of my all-time favorite countries. Um, and Kazakhstan was one of the very few countries I had only been to for work. So
Hmm.
and that's probably the only list I'm working on now. To there's I have 7 countries left where I have only been for work, and I want to travel to those 7 privately as well. So,
Hmm.
but it's just a haphazard thing, and otherwise whatever comes up, if I see if the season is right, or like and if I happen to be able to organize days off to travel, I will go there. And there's still so many things to look forward to. So so there, I really I know people who finished visiting every country and then they pursue other lists like regions or overseas territories, or I mean there you can make up many lists, but for me, I actually find pleasure mostly now in just traveling wherever I want to travel and wherever I feel like traveling without any pressure or any must do's or must sees or must visit. Because it's yeah, after all, it's basically it's a hobby that has been going a little bit too far maybe, but so
As
yeah.
yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how, we have this whole globe, this whole world available to us to explore, and you could go see all the amazing sights, or you could just kind of keep going deeper. You could go back and back to one country and over again. And I was thinking about where I live here in Missouri, and there's a lot of small rivers. Here we have kind of very ancient low mountains, the Ozark Mountains. And I haven't even been to all the rivers within an hour of my house, and I've been exploring here for 40 years. And it's like you could go just really deep in one area, or you could do the whole globe and sample it all. Um, and there's just so much nuance to experiencing the planet.
Well, that's it's interesting you say that because I believe, I mean, obviously I made a point of visiting every country myself, but at the same time I'm not really into like bucket list things, and I also don't really believe in the competitive element that some travelers put into it. So for me, I know people who go back to the same country for 40 years, and they know the country. Like if you're talking about in-depth travel, they really do, like they speak the local language. They always go to the same country, but a different part of it. So they really explore only one country, but they explore it really well. And you could make an argument saying, okay, they might not have been to every country. They might maybe have been only to one or two countries, but they also did travel in a very extensive way, but just in a different extensive way. They not counting countries, but just really dedicated their lives to exploring every nook and cranny and every corner and every whatever, every river, if you want to say it, in just one country. And I personally, I don't see why they would be lesser travelers than someone who's been to many more countries, but maybe seen them more superficially. So yeah, I very much recognize what you say. You can live 40 years in an area and you realize, well, there's still things in my own area which I haven't seen myself. So yeah, which is good. I mean, it always means that there's more to explore, and I think that's one of the basic things we as humans do. We have this urge to explore and to satisfy our curiosity, and this can be at many levels. And it can be at national levels, it can be regional, it can be global, it can be anything you want. So um, and well, good for us humans.
I noticed in your book that you seem to have a predisposition for taking local travel, and the results seem to often be up. You never know what's going to happen. Um,
No.
why why do you organize your trips in that way?
So I travel. I think I travel less for as I said before, I travel less for satisfying or working down bucket lists. So if I would go to a place, to a city, for instance, I would never take the hop on, hop off bus to see as many things as I can in maybe half a day or something, because I that doesn't bring me much. I much prefer just taking a subway somewhere, getting off at some unknown station and just walking around, maybe randomly, but then discovering maybe a small shop or a cafe or meeting people on the street. For me, this is much more interesting and much more adventurous, because in the end, when I travel, what I look for is adventure. And when you over organize your travels, at least for me, it means that you also take away that the element of adventure, and for me that's not why I travel. So and taking public transport, to answer your question, is almost a sure way to, maybe not in very well organized countries like, I don't know, Japan or Korea or some most countries in Europe, but or in the US, but especially in even South America is pretty well organized nowadays, but especially in Africa or Oceania, some countries in Asia, maybe taking local transport is almost a guaranteed way to make to to live unexpected situations, to have to deal with unforeseen circumstances, to meet people that will probably help you out or maybe try to take advantage of you. But and that's when the fun starts for me.
Yeah, you seem to have
I remember. Sorry.
well, you seem to have a really high tolerance for people taking advantage of you, or lack of sleep, or uncomfortable extra long journeys, um, which most people would just for the sake of their physical comfort avoid.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Now I was thinking, a couple of years ago I was traveling in Ivory Coast, and I actually met an American young woman who was traveling the same direction. So we ended up sharing. Well, we ended up traveling on the same local chicken bus, so to say, and in my memory, it was supposed to be like a 3 hour ride, but it ended up taking us more than it was way after sunset when we weren't even close to our destination. We had been on the bus for like maybe 10 hours. We had flat tires. We had almost everything that you can imagine happened. So, but it also meant that we just met the day before, but it created a bond between us because we were both suffering the same discomfort and ultimately we were also laughing about it because we were like, there's nothing we can do about this. We can't really improve the situation. So let's just let's just suffer and laugh and we will never forget this day because it's pretty crazy. And we didn't even arrive where we wanted to arrive because we decided when it was really dark. Uh, in most countries in Africa, when it's dark, it's advisable not to continue traveling because it can become really dangerous because of animals on the street because most roads are not really smooth. So we decided to stay overnight and to continue traveling the next day. But still, I mean, those days and I mean, if you're really tight on time, you could complain like, oh, we're losing a day and blah blah blah. But for me, I end up, and of course, there was a moment where I was like, oh damn, we're wasting our time, and then I just enter into a next phase where I just give into the situation, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, and let's just enjoy it and see how people here. I mean, this is their daily life. This is their reality. So, and just chat with them, talk to them, listen to them, and laugh with them. And then it becomes almost enjoyable in the end. And it's almost always you come home and that's probably the first story you tell your friends because that's the thing that sticks to your mind that you don't forget. And it's basically that's also the kind of stories I write about in my book because those are the stories that stick with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, there's got to be some element of travel in that way keeps teaching you not to be attached to how things are going to go. And
Yeah,
couple,
and well, that's very true, and it's actually we are, let's say we in the West, we are very much used to, we complain when our flight is 10 minutes late. We complain when our train is 10 minutes late. We expect everything to run smoothly and flawlessly and without any hiccups. And when things do turn out to be different, we complain and it's like, this is not how it should be. And it's really good to, at least for me, it's really interesting to see what happens if you travel in different kind of countries and where you ask beforehand how long is this ride going to take and they say yeah it's probably going to take 3 hours and then it ends up taking 10 hours and that's reality because there's potholes, there's traffic, there's accidents, there's whatever happening on the road. People have to stop because they need to shop somewhere or you you live the most crazy situations and I think that's where you get to see the real face of a country and not if you just follow some pre-organized tour and you see efficiently you see much more in much less time. um for me that's not the essence of travel. And again, obviously this is a very personal thing. I'm in no way saying that my way of traveling is better or worse than anyone else's traveling, but for me this is what brings joy to my travels. So the to basically figure in some unexpected situation and just uncertainty and because for me that's fun. That's where it's become interesting.
well, it's definitely interesting to read about I think it was the second or third chapter in your book where you jump off the train and you run to like
Mm.
move up the train. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, how many people in the world would be willing to hop off their train and leave their girlfriend, partner? You might not have got back on. That's totally Hollywood scene right there. That was just crazy. Uh,
Well, I was running because I wanted to get back to my partner. So because well, it's too long story to tell here, but that was um actually I amazed myself by doing that because the guy. So just for your listeners, I was on the train in Myanmar, and I did some shopping. My girlfriend was already on the train, and when I got back to the train, it was already moving. So I had to really run hard to catch the very last carriage. And when I was on it, it turned out that I couldn't move to the other parts of the train. So I was stuck basically, and I couldn't. This is pre-mobile phone, so I couldn't let my girlfriend know that I was on the train, but not able to reach her. So I knew that she would be super worried. And then the guy in the carriage told me, "Why don't you just jump off and run and jump on the second last wagon?" And I was like, first, when he told me, I was like, "Well, that's crazy. But how? Why would I ever jump off a train and then run faster than the train to catch up with the with the last carriage?" But in the end, that's what I did because for some reason he gave me the courage that I could, or the idea that I could do it. He made me believe it was possible, and we were going up a bridge, and obviously the train was going very slow. So yeah, so I managed to do it, but I think I included that story in the book because it shows the way I think, and as you say, probably many people will say, okay, this guy is just out of his mind. But why would you ever jump off a train? But I always like examine the situation and then act on what I think is the best thing to do to solve it or to
I
move
never had the
forward.
courage to jump on a train, but I had a friend in college who there was like a he's from Oregon, and there was like a secret underground manual that was going around. This is like 25 years ago, I guess, like how to get around by hopping on freight trains. I was like, people still do that? And he's like, yeah, I go home. Like I went from San Francisco back up to Oregon, and there was like a bunch of other guys on the train, and they all had the same leaflet that had been passed around, like how to hop on train cars, like how to be a hobo. And I haven't thought about that in a while, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But I never had the courage to do it because the story that he told right after that was like, yeah, some people freeze to death on trains. And I was like, oh gosh. So you would have to know what you're getting into. Um, man. Colville, the long road to Colville. I was waiting the whole book to find out. I don't know. We could probably just spoil it here, but why is the book titled that?
Um, well, yeah, good question. And I obviously I picked the title because I wanted exactly this like kind of mystery around it. It took me months to find the title that I like most. So I was, because there's a lot of different titles that you can give to a travel book. So and I remember that suddenly I was thinking, wait, I should do something with Colorville, because so just to explain to your listeners, at one moment I was looking ahead on to my travels, and I decided that my last country should be close to home because I wanted to celebrate my last country with my friends and family. And Ireland at that time was the only country I hadn't been to in Europe. So and being from Europe, yeah, it's super easy to reach. It's an hour and a half flight from where I live. So I picked Ireland as the last country, and then I was looking for a border crossing because I didn't just want to fly into Dublin because that would be too easy. So I decided to travel overland from Northern Ireland into Ireland, and I found this small village called Colville where there's a small river which is actually the border. So near Colville, there's a bridge spanning the border, and that bridge basically for me was the material concrete border, because there's no real border. It's not like America, Canada. There's you just drive across from Northern Ireland to Ireland, and there's nothing unless you come across a car where you see maybe different number plates, but there's nothing really tells you like, oh, I just crossed the border.
Hmm.
But this bridge, obviously, the bridge is the border. So for me, that was like a tangible thing to pick. And so you see, yeah. So the title is basically named after the village where I crossed the very last border into my very last country,
Hmm.
which was a sad moment because I really for my whole life since childhood I always loved um, entering a country I had never been to before and getting the first taste of a country I had never been to before. Seeing different people, trying different food, maybe seeing different languages on street signs and everything. And I remember when I crossed into Ireland, I realized I was very conscious, like I will never have this excitement anymore unless a new country is born, which I wouldn't even know which that country would be now because I mean, since 2000, only three countries have been born, have been added to the United Nations list. And um, yeah,
Too much
well, we have to
stability.
see. Well, yeah, obviously there were a lot of new countries in the 90s when the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Soviet Union, the Balkans, they fell apart. So a lot of new independent countries were being declared. But right now, there is supposedly Bougainville. It's right now it's part of Papua New Guinea, but it's one of the islands, easternmost island of Papua New Guinea, and it's supposedly getting independence in 2027.
Hmm.
Uh, but I when I was in Papua New Guinea, people were not really sure it was really going to happen. So it's not even. But I haven't been to the island. I unlike some other travelers, I actually don't want to go there until it becomes independent because I want to visit places in their independent state and not as part of a bigger country. Um, so yeah, if it becomes independent in 2027, I'll be on one of the first planes to go there.
All the 50 states of the United States are technically their own nationality as well. Have you done the states?
Uh, Not all of them, no. And actually, it's a pretty sad story, but I need I cannot get ESTA for the United States because I have been to countries where the US government prefers you not to travel. You probably know there's this list of like suspicious countries, and even worse so when for work I need a work visa, and my work visa application in 2018 was denied because I had been to those countries. So for 2.5 years, I wasn't even allowed. The United States was the only country in the world where I could not enter for 2.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
Um, yeah, I do have a work visa now, so I do fly to the US for work, but I still don't. I would still need to apply for a private visa to be able to travel there. And there's still I I'm not sure I would want to visit every state in the US, but there's quite a few states where which I really want to visit. So I think I should just bite the bullet and get because you probably know that getting a US visa is not really easy. It's a pretty huge questionnaire, and you need to make an appointment, and it's depending on the embassy or the consulate where you do it, but it can be a pretty complicated process. But the good thing is that now visas are valid for 10 years, so once you go through it, at least you have a visa for 10 years. But and I well, you're mentioning Missouri. I haven't been to Missouri, so that might be one of my destinations. Sell
There's a
Missouri
lot
to me right now.
there's a lot of rivers you could check out.
Yeah, oh yeah, I heard. So I heard.
Um, Actually, today I just applied for my world citizen passport, to have a second passport, and on there they cite the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that everyone has the right to travel, to leave their country, and to come into their country, to come back home. And then they say certain customs officials or border agents may deny you your universal human rights. And it's like, we'll give you this passport, but if someone doesn't accept it, that's you can still be out of luck. It seems to me that all over the world, border agents and customs agents feel like they have a lot of power, and they try to extort you or try to make your life really hard. What's up with that? Why do they do that?
Well, I don't know why you would ask me. You should ask the the officials.
Why do you think?
Well, um, I want to add something to what you said because I didn't even know about the existence of this world citizen passport. I'm gonna look into it right now after this after this interview because my dream is to get a second passport, and and this sounds like a really good one. Now the first thought when you introduced your question, I was thinking about I know quite a few travelers who have passports from, as we call them, low passport countries, low passport index countries, meaning that their passports are really weak. As you probably know,
Yeah.
there's like every year there's a classification, and I think for a few years already, Singapore has the strongest passport in the world. Then there's a bunch of European countries, among which my own. So I'm the lucky guy, one of the lucky guys to have a very strong passport, meaning that I can get into most countries without a visa, or the visa is very easy to get. So it's basically, for me, border crossings are relatively easy. I mean, you wouldn't say so when you read my book because I do describe some troubles I had to for getting into some countries, but when I listen to people who have a low passport index passport, that's a different ballgame because that's why I like this idea of a world citizen passport, because they have the same desire as me to travel, but for them, just because they were born in a different country, like in let's say the wrong country, for them crossing borders is way more difficult than for most of us Western people with stronger passports. So when I listen to those stories, I realize that I'm extremely fortunate. Maybe I've been unlucky in a few countries where officials have made life a bit hard for me, um, but when you read or hear their stories, it's like it's nothing compared to what those guys and those girls lived through. And that's it's basically I think it's a very sad situation because, as you say, you could say that the basic human right would be to explore our beautiful planet, but this right is much more reachable, much easier to reach for some people than for others. So there's a huge disparity in between people from different countries in the world. So um,
I'm guessing that's
unfortunately,
just because
that's reality.
Western countries or richer countries have their shit together enough to make a treaty with another country. Like, if your country
Well,
is
yeah,
in conflict, then you're like,
and
we
and
can't
and
we can't put
and
attention on that.
yeah, and not just in conflict, but it's also, obviously, there's also an economic dimension, and people from weaker passport countries would probably be frowned on by richer countries because they might think, oh, but you're probably you're coming here because you want to settle down here, because you want to find a job here, because you know, um, and that's very much happening both in the US and in Europe right now. Um, but even when they clearly say and they can prove, like, look, I'm just here for 1 or 2 weeks, I just want to visit your country, then I will go back to my own country. For those people, so often very hard. First of all, they need visas for almost every country, so that's where it starts, and visas can be very expensive for them. So especially considering their much lower income. And then there's a whole bunch of other barriers as well. So, but coming back to your question, I don't know why are some border officials have this sense of power, and I it sometimes almost feels like they thrive on it, that they really like to exert their and establish their power and show their power. Like, you know what, you may have a passport, but in the end, I decide if you enter or not. If I don't give you my stamp, you will not enter. So um yeah, I have mostly wondered why they would do this instead of having the answer to your question.
I'm really impressed with your ability to, if someone's trying to get a bribe from you or trying to get you to do something, you seem like you can just say, "Nah, I'm not going to do that," and they seem to let you off sometimes. How do you have the courage to just decline to bribe or participate in their schemes?
Well, I don't see it as courage, but I just don't, because this mostly happens in poor countries where obviously people have low incomes, and since I travel with local transport, I talk to people, and uh, I would meet teachers, or like people with uh, jobs like teachers or cleaners, or what have you, bicycle repair shops, or taxi drivers, whatever. So, and they all basically earn more or less the same salary, which is a very low salary. And then you come across a checkpoint or a border crossing, and suddenly you have to deal with officials who probably earn more or less the same salary as a teacher, and then suddenly they kind of claim that they can exert extra money from you just because you're passing through their checkpoint. Not even because you're a foreigner, because they do the same thing with locals as well. But um, and for me, this feels like, why would you, unless there's something wrong with my passport, or unless I'm breaking the law, then of course you can ask money. But otherwise, if you don't have a valid reason, why would you, just because you think you have some power over me, you can you can make my life a little bit harder by demanding money. Uh, and I mostly do it also for fellow travelers, because I strongly believe that if like every white person pays bribes, you first of all you keep a system of corruption in place, and secondly, the next traveler, uh, well, the official will expect the next traveler to pay maybe even more, because he thinks, well, wait, that was an easy 50
You're
bucks.
training
Well,
them.
maybe I can ask for 60 bucks this time. So there's a huge inflation of of corruption going on. And the whole thing with bribes is like, if you show them, look, I've got all the time in the world. So if you don't want to let me through, fine, I will just wait and I will see what happens. And then very often they give in, because they're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna wait here for a week. So then they give you your stamp, or they give you back your passport. Obviously, in my book, I describe a few situations where they didn't, and we actually really got into, or actually, I really got into trouble, because authorities wouldn't budge, and I also wouldn't budge. So then we have two stubborn persons, like confronting each other. Um, but yeah, no, I don't see it as courageous at all. It's just, for me, it's, I don't know, it's a matter of, almost a matter of principle. And obviously, some people say, I know travelers who say, well, yeah, you just put some dollar notes in your passport, and everything will be smooth, which is a very easy way to travel, maybe. But for some reason, as I said, you keep, because the funny part is that those same people will then complain, like, oh yeah, like Africa is such a corrupt continent. And like, well, yeah, but you're basically you're paying for the system to be corrupt, because you're actually one of the corrupt people yourself. So
Wow,
how
yeah.
can you comment? How can you comment on corruption if you're part of the game? So Um, and it's ultimately it's and obviously this is at a very low level, but it obviously also happens at at higher levels, and in the end it basically is very disadvantageous for local people, because if authorities get away with um, extracting money, like black money, because it's never recorded anywhere. So if they get away with extracting that from locals, because it, as I said, it doesn't happen just to me as a foreigner, but it happens to everyone. And if this is like a structural thing, I believe in the end it's not good for a country, because you want your country to be honest and to be transparent, and and in many cases it's not.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that way.
But
I actually hadn't thought about it like that. Um, that you're training corruption by doing that.
well, yeah, I believe so. Um, because up and I can, I mean, imagining the officer, I can imagine if people, if people hide, because that's mostly how many people do it. If people hide like $50 notes in their passport, and you're the official and you open the passport, oh, that's good. Oh, here's your stamp. Goodbye. Have a nice day. Um, that creates expectations, because then it's like, well, okay, the next guy will also have to pay me at least $50, because otherwise I will ask more for him, more for letting him through. So and if you make a point of saying, well, why would I pay this $50? Why are you asking for money? And again, I can understand. I mean, obviously I know I can understand that if people don't have a lot of money, they sure, you can always try to ask for money, but then it becomes more like begging. It's and for an official, I don't know, if begging is is part of your official
Official state
function,
beggar.
right? Well, yeah.
Um, because you and I are from wealthy countries and our currency does pretty well, trans exchange rate wise, do you ever feel like you just want to distribute money, or you want to spend in a local area because you feel extra wealthy and you think it's going to help the people that you become friends with? Like you're just more apt to spend more because you want to, I don't know, boost the economy locally or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And exactly, this is basically what I was trying to say with the corruption thing. That I absolutely, when I travel somewhere, and this is one of the reasons why I travel locally. I don't want to spend my money on, I don't know, on a hotel room in a Hilton hotel, or like an international chain. I want to make sure that I stay with a local owned guest house or restaurant, or transport company, or whatever. And absolutely, I think as a traveler, I mean, this is why would people even be wanting to receive travelers or tourists into the country if they wouldn't make money out of it? So I think this is I mean, tourism is one of the biggest industries in the world, and it's helping a lot of countries in earning or generating income. Um, But my whole point is that this income should be earned in an honest way. So if and I much rather spend my money on a local lady selling whatever, something like clothes or jewelry, or vegetables, or fruit or whatever, than giving my money blindly to an official who then buys alcohol or cigarettes for it. So
Mm-hmm.
and no, I absolutely believe that, um, especially now that tourism is back on the, like after COVID, we're traveling almost as much as we did before, and it's potentially it can be a very positive, it can have a very positive impact on local economies. Uh, but I think we have an obligation as travelers to spend our dollars wisely, and to consciously pick local enterprises or local companies and local local agencies and local people with their, because there's a lot of smart people understanding that there's a potential income to be earned from tourism.
Hmm.
And I think as a visitor, we almost obliged to 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 support those people and to show that we're not just coming there uh, to take pictures and to leave and to just stay in big hotel chains, but to actually support the local economy and to maybe, I mean, I let's say I'm on a taxi talking to the driver, and he talks about, I'm asking about, oh, do you have kids? Yeah, I have two kids, and I'm trying to give them education, but it's pretty costly. That I'm so happy to tip him extra, and I make sure to tell him, like, I really hope that you will that this will contribute to better education for your kids, because it's, for me, that's one of the best things you can do as a foreigner. And I'm not in a position to pay education for someone else's kids, but at least part of it, it also gives you a great feeling to be able
Hmm.
to help people out, and to advance and to make them advance into a more prosperous future.
Yeah. You talked about, don't stay in an international chain. What's your I hear a lot of travelers saying, like, you got to go now before the whole world looks the same, right? There was Kentucky Fried Chicken in Bali where we lived. Everyone loved to eat there. We went to Starbucks in Saigon when we needed to access the internet, and it could end up looking pretty much just like California or something like that. Are there still plenty of places that are unique and untouched by the creep of corporate globalism?
Absolutely. Um, when I decided in 2008 to visit every country in the world, to make this my life goal, and I made up a list of countries I hadn't been to yet. I had already been to more than 110, so I was pretty much more than halfway down the list of 193. Um, but there were some countries on that list that I hadn't even heard of. So I was really curious, like, well, what can I do there? What can I see there? And many of those countries actually turn out to be still very authentic, and no trace
Oh,
of
good.
McDonald's or any of the, yeah. So there's still, but obviously this is changing, and it's interesting to see how tourism follows certain patterns. Like many decades ago, someone went to Thailand, and he advised his friends, "Oh, Thailand's a great country." And then a few decades later, here we are. Thailand is like overrun by tourism, and but then there's always a next hype destination. Like it was for some years, it was Laos. Now maybe Colombia, or there's always new countries popping up every now and then, and suddenly it becomes like a new hype or a new trend. Like everyone goes to this new country, and then you do see what you're saying. You do see international change thinking, understandably thinking, wait a minute, there's a market also in this country, because there's more people coming there, maybe more income, so we can build a business here. And but there's still quite a few countries, like for instance Papua New Guinea, where I was a few months ago, where you don't see anything. I I do believe they have some international hotel chains in the capital city, but you don't see any of the other signs of universal consumerism, coffee chains or hamburger chains or whatever, but what have you. Well, Kentucky Fried Chicken or any of the other famous brands. Um, um, but more in general, I mean, not even talking about brands or companies, but I was really relieved almost to see that there's still so many places where I've been to countries where people were asking me like, so what business are you in? I said, well, I'm just traveling here as a tour, as a visitor. And they said, what do you mean traveling? But you must do something here. Why would you be why would you be in our country if you don't have a business here? I said, well, because I'm just curious to get to know your country. So I want to see what it has to offer, and I want to meet locals, and I want to try local food and everything. And then I found out that they didn't even know the concept of holidays. So they were like, well, so when are you working? I said, well, I'm off for a few weeks and then I go back to work. And they were like, well, what do you mean? We work 7 days a week. So they looked at me like, that's really weird. So you're actually off for a few weeks and then you can do whatever you want. I said, well, yeah, and many people do that. And then but the smarter persons then looked at me like, wait a minute, are there more people like you just traveling for fun without doing business? And yeah, millions of people are doing that. And then you would see them think like, wait a minute, maybe there's money to be made
Ah.
and I now I had really interesting discussions with people who were thinking of like, I'm thinking, for instance, some countries in the Pacific which are uh, almost unvisited, like maybe a few hundred people, foreigners a year visited, and most of them would be businessmen, in fact. So they're completely they don't know the whole concept of tourism. So and some smarter souls would then think, maybe we should do something. We should build a hotel. We should open a restaurant or something. And I had discussions with them like, well, yeah, you can absolutely make money on tourism, but be careful because it can also backfire, and tourism can also, unfortunately, tourism also has the power to destroy societies and places and communities. So you can, um, if you want to build tourism in your country, and most of those countries really I see a lot of potential in many countries I've been to where there is no tourism yet, and where there's still, infrastructure missing, and so there's still a lot to be developed. Um, but I always advise them to really uh, think well of how to do it, and not to just blindly go there, make money, make money, make money, and without realizing how it can affect your local community or your local country. Because we all know examples of places which suffer from over tourism, as we call it. So where locals almost can't even go to their own cities anymore because they're overrun by visitors, and this is probably not something you want to do. Um, so
Yeah, I
this
was
this is
just
becoming much more and more a theme of for which at least, for instance, in Europe, we already have a few cities like my own. I'm from the Netherlands. My Amsterdam is our capital city, which has been a very popular for tourism, and they actually now actively trying to uh, send people somewhere else that don't come to Amsterdam, go
oh,
somewhere else, and
interesting.
still in the Netherlands, but they're marketing like, yeah, we have some nice lakes, we have a beach, we have other places, which is true because Netherlands is obviously a very small country. So within half an hour to an hour from Amsterdam, you can find a lot of interesting places. But obviously, for many decades, everyone would just go to Amsterdam and they had seen the Netherlands. So now they're to uh, decrease tourism in Amsterdam. They're trying to persuade people to go elsewhere
Oh, interesting.
in the
Look
same
over here.
country. And sorry.
Look over here.
Yeah,
The classic
yeah, yeah, well,
magician's
yeah, yeah.
trick.
So yeah, exactly. So, and and that's an example. If it goes too far, because for a long time, obviously, cities have been competing and they've been trying to lure more tourism into the country to earn more income. Until you reach a point where you realize, well, we've gone too far, and we want to control all these um, hundreds of thousands of visitors a little bit better, so that we so that people living in the city, because there's actually these cities are not museums, they're just they're actually cities where people live in, and just to make life a little bit more bearable for locals. I had the same impression in Manhattan, for instance. Manhattan sometimes can be also
Mm.
extremely busy with visitors, and then I'm like, yeah, I had instances in like, I think mostly in summer, where walking the sidewalks was almost impossible because there was just too many people. You even had to walk, you had to wait until you could continue walking to the next block. Um, so I don't know. Maybe New York one day will start a campaign to deflect tourism to nearby attractions or cities
Yeah,
or
go check out
beaches or whatever. So
Hoboken.
yeah, for instance, I don't know, um, but yeah.
I was
But
just
yeah,
thinking
to answer your
about Bali, and I'm so impressed.
yeah.
We love Bali. We've lived there a few times. I'm so impressed that they are able to keep their culture so strong, because tourists have been going there 60 years or more now at this point, and it's still half of the time local people are doing local, there's a ceremony happening all the time. They're still doing traditional hand rice farming next to an amazing hotel. And it's like, I, I'm so impressed that it's almost like um, supernatural dedication to their culture in a way.
Yeah, you're right. But my last visit to Bali is quite a few years ago. But it's true. It feels like they found a really good balance between maintaining their own traditions and also allowing in tourism from basically all over the world, because Bali now is a big destination, and people from everywhere go there. So, but it's really admirable. And this is why I'm saying, because I'm sure that this is they chose to do it consciously, to do it this way, to preserve their own traditions, and I believe that's really important. And unfortunately, I also know places where they haven't done this, and it as a visitor, it doesn't feel good. You should, I think you should strive for striking the balance, like for instance Bali has done it, where you preserve your traditions, you continue doing what you've been doing for decades or maybe centuries, and at the same time you also provide an infrastructure for tourism to be able to visit your island in this case, or your country or your place, and then and accommodate tourism and tourists, and make them feel home. And because this is why you travel for. You don't want to travel to Bali when it's all modern and concrete. You travel to Bali because you also want to see some of the some of the things and habits and traditions that make Bali what is Bali, and what is not anything else in the world. So I think it's, if you lose your true identity as a destination, I think eventually probably tourism will just turn its back on you and
Mm,
go elsewhere. Because why would you go to a place which is like anywhere else? You
yeah.
want to go to a place because it has something to offer that which is unique. So
We were talking about passports, and something came up for me to ask you about, which is immigration. And in the United States and Europe, I guess globally, there's more, climate refugees, or just more pressure from all sides for people to immigrate to more preferable countries. I know that in Texas it's a problem, and then there's putting them on buses and sending them up to New York and Chicago and Washington, and those cities were like, oh, we're going to be a place of refuge. And then there's too many immigrants, and they're like, actually, never mind, not don't send them here. So and I think, like in Europe, I hear that it's influx from the Middle East and from Africa. Um, yeah, how do you think about immigration?
Ah, that's yeah, Europe. I don't. I know, of course, in the US, it's a big theme, and it's probably going to be. I can imagine it's going to be one of the topics for your elections next year. And it's the same in Europe. We have um, the problem in Europe is that we are obviously European Union with a lot of different countries and with a lot of different ideas about how to deal with it with migration and immigration. And there's a lot of tragedy happening with people crossing, as you say, crossing from mostly from Africa into they tried to cross the Middle East, the Mediterranean to reach Spain or Italy or Greece. Uh, Hundreds of people dying because their boats are too small because the sea is too rough and everything. So there's a lot of tragic accidents happening. Um, as far as I see it, I don't know the US, but the situation in Europe is that we are getting more and more shortage of employment. So there's a huge demand for labor, and I believe, but this is not reflected in any way in European policies. But I believe that we will actually need migration pretty soon, just because simply because we are lacking labor. We need labor. We need people to work.
Hmm.
And our populations are in most countries are aging very fast. So it's only getting worse. Like probably 5 or 10 years from now, there will be like a wave of retirement. So there will be a lot of retired people, and the workforce will be always relatively smaller. So, but still, there will be more work to be done, even if only to keep those retired people alive and and
Yeah.
happy and healthy. So yeah, like in my country right now, there's a shortage basically of everything, like teachers, nurses, doctors, judges, you name it, and there's a shortage of labor. So eventually, apparently, we don't have enough young people to fill those jobs. So I think, and for some reason, this is never being discussed, at least not at higher levels in Europe. And for some reason, I I believe that eventually we will actually be welcoming migration because
Hmm.
we just simply we need people to do work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Have you
so yeah, and
encountered
and and up.
have you encountered
Sorry.
Peter Zehan's work? He's a geopolitical
No,
strategist.
no.
He was the first person who presented the effect of demographics on global economies, and seeing those, how people are aging, and in the United States we had the baby boom, and now we have all those people in their late 60s and 70s now that just retired basically, and so all the earning potential just left the market basically. And he said something like, if you want a productive 35-year-old in your society, you had to start 35 years ago. Like, you can't accelerate that process.
That's the whole thing. I mean, I was listening to a podcast a few days ago in Netherlands, and they said, well, we need to start getting more kids, but even if we started today, we would only see the effect more than 20 years from now. So what are we going to do between now and 20 years? Because that's a huge gap. At the same time, migration has always happened. Historically, there has never been a period without migration. And for instance, after the Second World War, I know that for a fact that for instance, many Dutch farmers left Netherlands because Netherlands in the 50s was not doing too good. So they either left for Canada or US, or they left for New Zealand or Australia to just start a new life. And so they were also immigrants. They migrated away from Netherlands, and they migrated to other continents even. Um, were they ever sent back, or were they ever treated badly because they were immigrants? I don't think so. And now it is happening in a reverse way. Um, yeah, it happens. It has to be regulated. Obviously, we like there's some um, practical things that we need to solve. Like in Netherlands, we have a small country. We're almost hitting 18 million inhabitants, which is for the size of our country, it's that's enormous.
Hmm.
And so we have a problem in housing, for instance. We are basically running out of space. So we cannot accommodate millions more people because we simply don't have the houses to live in. So those practical things need to be solved. But obviously on the European level, uh, Europe is much bigger than Netherlands. And most other countries have obviously have much bigger countries and have more surface, more potential to accommodate people. So
Yeah, Ukraine has a
um,
lot of space.
that's a huge country. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
but that's another thing. Ukraine now, I don't know the latest figures, but they like millions and millions of Ukrainians have migrated away from the war. So and they live all over. Like I have now employed a lady from Ukraine to clean my house because it feels good to support her. And there's literally millions of Ukrainians across Europe who are starting a new life. I do believe that at least most of them one day want to move back to Ukraine, but
mhm.
that's not unfortunately not going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, that's another example of migration which happened, like it started like what is it, a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
So that's, yeah, migration is has happened all the time. It's and you can try to you probably need to control it and to act wisely on it, but um but I don't think you can, as some, even in my country, some political parties want to almost um abolish migration and or forbid it, and that's I just don't see how that would happen because you can't do it. People will move, people will find a new place to live, a new economy to earn their money in, maybe to and as I said, probably we will need their expertise. We will need teachers. We will need nurses. We will need doctors. We will need well, what have you, people to run the railways, to drive our buses, to to run our supermarkets and everything else. So yeah, I expect to see more migration in the coming decades into Europe.
yeah. I can't remember if this is a quote that you said on a podcast. I was listening to you, but it was something like humans are the only ones who have borders. Like you can't, there's no bear immigration or, bird immigration policies because they just cross wherever they want.
Well, I don't think I said it, but I did say I did come across a guy in that's what just comes to my mind when you mentioned this. I was in Kiribati, which is a country in the Pacific, and I was in a very remote island talking to a young guy, and he asked me where I was from because obviously that's the number one question. Where are you from? So I said the Netherlands. Of course, he didn't know anything about the Netherlands, so I helped him and I said, well, it's pretty close to Germany and France and Great Britain. And then he asked me, so how many hours does it take by boat to get from Netherlands to Germany? And I looked at him like, well, there is no boat from it's just a land border. You just cross it by car or train or walking or cycling, and you're in another country. And he just didn't understand it. And then he goes like, so how many hours by boat to France? And I said, well, again, there's no boat to France. It's just you just cross, and there's even Belgium in between. So, and then first I thought, well, this guy is not really smart because how can he not know that Europe is basically a bunch of countries on one continent, and they all share land borders, apart from like Malta or Great Britain or well, whatever, Iceland. But most other countries are all attached
Hmm.
by land. And then suddenly I realized, well, for this guy, identity is defined by islands because he comes from an island nation. And in the whole region, it's like Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Philippines. It's all island nations. So for him, your your identity is linked to your island, and he just couldn't even imagine that you could have a different identity just sharing a land border. So basically, just on the same land, you would have different people speaking different languages. For him, that was just unthinkable. And then I was basically coming to what you're saying, like, yeah, borders are just a human invention. I mean, it a bear or a bird or any other animal, they wouldn't have a clue if they were in the US or Mexico or Canada. They would just walk across the border unless there's a war or something, but then they wouldn't even know. I mean, they would just drinking from they would be continue drinking from rivers and eating grass from the ground. So so otherwise the whole rest is invented by humans, obviously, with a lot of historical. And obviously, why is the border between Netherlands and Germany where it is now? Well, this is a historical development, and eventually this is how they were marked up. But it's completely haphazard. It's this is just how it came into being, and the same thing almost anywhere else,
Does
especially in Africa. Sorry.
Yeah, they just drew them up. They just were like, let's put some lines here.
Well, yeah, when you look at the map in Africa, you see some borders which are literally drawn by a ruler. So they're really completely straight borders. They're not like normally you would see a river, you would or a mountain range, or you would see some it would almost never be a straight line. But in Africa, it was really made up by humans on a map basically, and
Yeah.
divided up by colonial powers.
There's a funny little spot of the United States, which is it's up in Canada. There's like if you're in Minnesota, there's this weird little like line that kind of like goes up and down, a little thumb sticking up, but you can't get there by land. You have to either drive through Canada to get to the United States or boat across to get to the rest of the United States. It's this kind of like an island within
Uh,
another country. And there's just so many, I mean, I
ooh,
suppose you find those all over the place. Weird little relics of map making that just don't
yeah,
make any
yeah, yeah.
sense.
Well, actually, in Netherlands, we have the biggest exclave enclave area where there's two villages which are partly Netherlands, partly Belgium, and but the border runs like it's really crazy if you go there because it has I think over 30 different enclaves and exclaves, but they're very very small. Like you can literally walk through most of them in a day. And but sometimes borders would run straight through a building or a house. um, and I visited during COVID, and Netherlands and Belgium had different COVID policies. So I went to a shop. That was really crazy because the shop had was partly in Netherlands and partly in Belgium, and Belgium still had uh, forbidden shops to open, but Netherlands already told shops, yeah, you can do business now. So the shop was only partly working, and you could only take articles from the Dutch part of the shop and not from
Oh
the
my
Belgian part
goodness.
of the shop because and that just showed how. And this is a relic of like hundreds of years ago when they made up those borders. And there's you can see on the pavement you can see there's markers which with an N, L, or a B, so you can see which country you're in. There's flags on houses, so you always know which country you're in, but it's super fascinating to walk around it because it doesn't make any sense to like to anyone visiting.
I can't believe that they were such good rule followers that they actually didn't let people get items from the Belgian side. I would have just been like, yeah, whatever, we're open. It's fine.
I know. I even think it, but this was on international media because it was such a weird COVID spin-off. I mean, COVID itself was a very weird period, of course, but in many respects, but like this was really crazy. Like how can you have a shop which is half closed because because it belongs to a different country than the other part of the shop?
Yeah, that the rule breaker in me wants to just throw out all kinds of whenever I hear a nonsense rule like that, I'm just like, whatever. Like it doesn't apply to me. Um, and a lot of times I'll take a picture when I'm traveling. I'll take a picture where a sign that says like nobody allowed past this point, and I'm take a selfie there because that this doesn't apply to me. This applies to other people, but not me. Um, and usually, it's really there's not too crowded past those signs.
That's a good thing, right?
So, what country or countries just really stole your heart?
Well, absolutely. Papua New Guinea, the one I already mentioned before, it stole my heart on my first visit, and precisely because of its authenticity. Is I cannot imagine it was very different 100 years ago. Let's say this. Let me put it this way, because I really was impressed by how people have completely their own way of living their lives, and also how extremely rich the country that like they have less than 10 million inhabitants and they speak more than 800 different languages. Just do the math, like 800 different languages for less than
Wow.
10 million people. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 800 languages is more than 15% of all languages in the whole world, spoken by one small country in in the Pacific. And just imagine that all those languages represent different tribes speaking
Hmm.
different languages, but also having different traditions, different clothes, different everything. So you can already start to imagine how extremely varied their culture is. And this for a visitor, at least for me, this makes it like a truly unique and extremely rich country, even though they're very poor. But um, the downside is that infrastructure is badly developed, so there's hardly any roads, so you often end up flying between areas and between islands in Papua New Guinea. But apart from cultural diversity, it has high mountains, it has tropical islands, it has fantastic scuba diving, it has beaches, it has really so much to offer to have a great time as a traveler. So that's why I gladly came. Like my first visit, I was there for 3.5 weeks, and I came back for another 5 weeks this year, and I still haven't seen maybe even half of it because because travel is slow. And so yeah, that's at least one of the countries that stole my heart. Another one would be Yemen. Um, but that was when I was on my first visit before the war. Um, and again, basically the same reason. Very, very authentic, very welcoming and humble people who were not trying to like, unlike some other countries in the Middle East, but no one was trying to sell me anything. People were just generally welcoming me into their beautiful country, and it has absolutely stunning architecture. It has deserts, it has really old cities with uh, what they claim are the oldest skyscrapers in the world. They're like 8 to 9 story buildings made of adobe, and
Whoa.
when you see it, is that's just and these are 500 years old. So just imagine a tower basically made of mud of of eight to nine stories tall.
500-year-old
That's
mud.
completely crazy. Well, yeah, obviously they are maintained. They have to be maintained because they need to redo them every 2 years, I think. But just to maintain the mud and to maintain the consistency of the walls. Um, but so yeah, that's definitely another country that pops up in my mind.
Was that because you met
Is
that girl
that
there also?
well, that was an added bonus, but no, it stole my heart before I met her. So obviously that gave a different dimension to it for me. But no, already before I was really um really take yeah really
Hmm.
I really loved it pretty soon after I arrived. Because people really respected me and they treated me so nicely and so with as I said that they were really humble. They were just making sure that I was having a really good experience. I very often had, like, every day I had cases where people would pay for my food, pay for my bus ride, pay for whatever. They would invite me for lunch. They would do this for me. They would that for me. So, and I'm talking about people who were really poor. So they really wanted me to feel welcome in the country, and that really touches me. That touched me deeply when I was there. I came back to Yemen twice a few years ago, and unfortunately, as we all know, it's still in this war situation, and it's really sad to see those same poor, humble people suffering
Mm-mm.
from a war, which is
Hmm.
basically at least partly fought by foreign powers. There's all it's basically a proxy war being fought in Yemen, and it's really devastating to see how people suffer. And yeah, so I can only wish that this war will be ended somewhere soon, because
Mm.
it's yeah, Yemeni people deserve so much better.
Yeah. Hmm. As you were saying how they were taking care of you and bringing you into their homes to have meals and all things like that, I realized I'm not sure if I've ever actually done that with someone that people that are visiting and they're introduced to me ahead of time. Like, yes. But I'm not sure I've ever met a stranger and be like, hey, come on over.
You mean in your home?
Yeah, here,
Yeah.
a traveler who's just like
Well, I
passing through.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, come on.
No, I actually do that because I realized that I mean, mostly I would be the traveler. I'm almost never home, but when I'm home, and when it doesn't happen every day, of course, but when the situation arises, I would gladly invite people to my house, just basically to pay back what I received so many times from when I was traveling myself. So, and I know how interesting it can be for a visitor to enter a home in a foreign country that you don't really know, and to see how people live. I remember a few years ago, I arrived on Easter Day. It was very cold, and there were three Chinese ladies at the. I came back from a flight. I was going to walk home, and there were three Chinese ladies standing at the railway station, and they didn't know where to go. And I asked them, "Well, can I help you?" And then they ended up coming with me to my house. And
Hmm.
since it was cold, and they were from a warmer part in China, so they were really suffering. So I have a stove at home, so I lit the fire, and for them, they took, I don't know how many pictures of my stove, because for them making a fire in a house was that like a really crazy weird idea. Why would this is really dangerous? So they were looking at me like, are you are you burning down your house? I said, no, 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 I'm making a fire to make it warmer. And they were filming it, they were taking pictures, and they were like, and then obviously it got warmer pretty soon. So they were like, and they were all huddling around the stove, and oh, this is fantastic. And they were sending messages to their friends in China,
Oh,
like, look
wow.
what we found. We find someone making a fire in his house. So that was, even for me, that was a fantastic experience. So then I made some pie for them, and even though their
Wow.
English was very basic, but it was a great experience. So now it's now I yeah, why
That's
don't you
amazing.
start inviting for no, I think it's a really good thing to do. It's and not just to pay back, but it's just a great experience to open up for foreign visitors, because most, I probably even all of them, will be super grateful to see locals living their life, and see how, like, the weird one of the weird things in Netherlands is that we almost never use curtains. So and many foreigners notice when you walk the streets in Amsterdam or other cities in Netherlands during the evening, people just leave their curtains open, and you can just look into people's houses. You can almost see what they're eating. And for many foreigners, this is really weird. Like, for
Yeah.
some reason, most people want their privacy, and they would close up. So it's and I quite often see, because my house is on a tourist route through the city I live in. I don't live in Amsterdam itself, but in Leiden, which is the oldest university city in Netherlands. So and it's it gets some tourism, and my house is on one of the tourist walks through the city, and I quite often see people looking into my house, and and trying to see what it looks like. And when I see that, I well, not always, but I sometimes open my door and say, "Well,
Oh,
do
wow.
you want to have a look inside?" And yeah, why did you come in?
Okay, I think the hard part for me would be where am I gonna find some tourists? Because I would have to like go out and find them probably, or
Yeah,
set it some
yeah.
sort of trap, like a little scavenger hunt that leads them to me.
Open
Tourist
up a
trap.
souvenir shop.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Great.
don't know about tourism in Missouri. So someone told me that there's a lot of rivers, but otherwise,
Amazing. Uh, so this woman that you met in Yemen, um, when I that's the first story in the book, I think.
yep,
And when
yep.
I read that, uh, I've had that same sort of experience where I've met someone and I'm like, how am I gonna see them again? And it seems like there's so many circumstances like to meet did you guys eventually get married, or was she your girlfriend, or what was the eventual?
Yeah, we lived together. She came to live with me in the Netherlands, but then we broke up. So we ended up never getting married.
Mm,
But what you don't know is
mm.
that we reconnected
Oh, after
be,
you wrote the book?
because of the book. We reconnected. Yes.
Whoa,
Yeah.
amazing.
This
What's
will
that
be
like?
well, I was when I was translating my book into English, I suddenly realized that she almost had a right to read the first chapter, because it was about her as well, about our story, and about Yemen. And basically Yemen, well, the whole breakup and everything was the direct reason for me to decide to travel to every country. So that's
Mm,
why it was relevant as the first chapter for me. Um, but anyway, we had a really ugly breakup. So we were completely out of touch for 13 years. And when I decided, like, she needed to have a copy, I was like, well, yeah, but how am I going to find her? Because I have
hmm.
no address, I have nothing. I really have had nothing. So I found out that her Facebook was open. So when I looked for her, I could read her timeline on Facebook, and obviously Facebook doesn't give you a physical address. But I did find where she lived, somewhere in Spain. So I ended up flying to Spain, renting a car, driving to the village where she lived nearby, and then I eventually managed. It was not very easy, but I managed to find her. And obviously she was in shock. Um, and then I explained, I said, well, look, after our breakup, I decided to travel to every country and I wrote a book about it. Chapter one is about Yemen and and you're in it. So I feel you have a right to have a copy of my book. So yeah, that
Wait, so
was
you
pretty
what you
crazy.
just flew to the village and just asked around,
Well,
hey, this woman?
I flew to Barcelona, I rented a car, I drove to her village and I asked around because she's from Denmark. She lives there with a lot of animals, and I was pretty sure that people should know her because there's not so many Danish women living near this village with a lot of animals. But to my surprise, no one knew her. So it took a lot of effort to find her, but I did find her.
Whoa.
I felt like being a detective. Yeah,
Yeah. When do you guys talk now?
yeah, we're still in touch. Yep, absolutely.
Wow.
We and yeah, and
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah, it is, and it was good to um like it was very unfortunate the way we ended our relationship, and it has always been well for 30 years. It has been some kind of a I don't know a sore spot on my soul, so to
Mm.
say, and it was really good to reconnect and to erase that and to establish a more healthy, better relationship together. So we're obviously both in a completely different life now. We're older, we're wiser, we're we're doing
Hmm.
different things from 13 years ago. Um, but yeah, it's really good to be reconnected.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I have a similar actually it's so funny. The same person that your story made me think of when I spent, this is someone I met in college. She ended up being my girlfriend in college, but I spent 4 months trying to figure out how to talk to her. Uh, it was actually, if I was more brave, it probably would have been easier. But then we dated for a long time and had a bad breakup and didn't just no communication. She moved across the world. I moved across the world, and then a decade later, I can't remember. I was driving through her city, and I was like, I wonder if she lives here. And I texted my friend that knows us both. He sent me her number, and I was like, hey. And she's like, hey. And now we talk. I don't know, maybe once a month. It's not it's not like we're close, but it's like it's nice knowing that all the painful things kind of just drifted away with time, and we can just be nice to each other.
Well, exactly. I yeah, I believe um you must understand what I'm saying when I say that it's healthy to reconnect in a better way and to really close this ugly part in the past and to move forward and in as because if you have been in a relationship, for me it's always hard to understand why you would become enemies because you probably when you were together in the good times you probably shared a lot of good things and it was fantastic and everything. How could that end up being the opposite?
Yeah.
It's really sad when you think about it. And I think not necessarily and as your example also shows, but over time, because of course you can have a difficult period, but over time when you move forward and you leave this behind, and then you can reconnect and you can um, appreciate the good things you had and maybe forget the bad things that were there. Because
Yeah.
we need to be positive. I don't believe it's good to dwell in misery and and only focus on the bad stuff. I mean, you need to tackle the bad stuff and you need to get over it and think about it, but eventually you need to leave it behind and move on and focus on the good things and appreciate those because having such a bond is special and it needs to be cherished, I think, instead of being something painful.
And that's the thing with travel too, is when you're in the, transportation woes or the border crossing woes or lack of sleep or whatever it may be, and you're like, oh, this sucks. And then, enough time goes by, you're like, oh, it was a great time. I don't remember any of the pain. Let's do it again.
That's
Oh,
absolutely true because you literally you cannot. I can recall a lot of uncomfortable rides, but I cannot. You cannot reproduce the pain that you felt. You cannot reproduce the physical discomfort because you can remember it was not comfortable, but you cannot really feel that you were almost suffocating or it was really hot or there were too many people in the car or any of the. But it it only becomes like this crazy memory or this fun memory. Like, oh yeah, it was really like I had this ride in Africa where um there were three people sitting on the passenger seat. There were two people sitting on the driver's seat, and then there were six people sitting on. And I'm talking about like a small Japanese car. So
okay.
we were like one five. We were 11 people in a small Japanese car.
Oh my gosh.
And the driver was sharing a seat with a passenger, and he had trouble because it was a manual car, so he had trouble changing gears because he had to go around the passenger to reach the the gears. So so I
Oh,
mean, and those things for now when I sit when I tell you, it sounds like fun, but when I was in that car, I can tell you I was sweating and I was like, oh my God, this is pretty weird.
yeah. That reminds me of when I was in the Boy Scouts, we took the train all the way up, like a 2 day trip up to New York, and we were going to do this couple days, a couple weeks in the wilderness, and they the camp sent someone who was supposed to pick us up in like a big van, or a truck or something to haul all our camping gear, and there was 9 of us boys or something, and he shows up in a kind of in a station wagon, but there's 9 of us and we each have these huge packs, and there's like 7 seats. So what we do is we make this huge pile of the packs on the roof. It's just like this tower of backpacks, and then we're sitting with the packs in the car, and it's like, well, we're Boy Scouts, we have a lot of rope, we know how to tie things, so let's just tie everything onto the car. And it just looked like Beverly Hillbillies driving up there. Oh man, but yeah, you remember those things.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it wouldn't have been. You would never remember it if it would have been a bigger car with a lot of room for your bags, and then you just put your bags and you take your seat and you drive. That would not be a memory, but now it is because you you had to tie your bags to the roof and
Yeah, actually, man, that trip, we had this crazy guide. He had a one glass eye, kind of like Mad Eye Moody and Harry Potter, and you're supposed to hang your bags up in the trees so the bears don't eat your food. And he was like, nah,
yeah.
that's too much effort. We'll just hide the food under the canoe and put some pots and pans on the top, so if they tip the canoe over, it'll scare them off. Anyway, one night, pots and pans fall off. There's a bear trying to get our food, and he comes out and he just like charges the bear. He's like, ah, get out of here. And he's like, and the scares the bear off by, attacking the bear. And it's like, who the hell is this guy? Oh, good stuff. Hmm.
But did he take your food or not?
He didn't quite get to it. So it
No, no,
worked.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Bear trap.
So he was right.
Yeah. You just have to be willing to fight a bear.
Yeah, that's a minor thing, right?
Yeah. If you've done it once, then you can do it again. Um, yeah, let's man, this has been so much fun hanging out with you. And you know, here we are just sharing travel stories. Maybe one final question would be like, how do you gather intel from other travelers, or how do you like when you meet someone who's gone to some places that you haven't been, you're like, oh, I can tell you're a pretty good traveler, I'm a good traveler, you know, what do you suss out information when you're getting the inside scoop from another traveler?
Well, this is pretty easy now because we have I'm part of several bigger internet communities where, as we say, stream travelers connect, and you would be amazed if you like, for most people it would be pretty insane to hear, but you would be amazed that every single day there's a discussion about the latest person who went to Afghanistan, to Somalia, to all these, and almost any country you can think of. So you can find really recent, up to date information, probably yesterday or the day before yesterday, about visiting almost any place in the world. And if you don't find it, you can just ask, and you will get a reply in what, half an hour maybe, or maybe an hour. Um, and this makes life, like, compared to even 10 or 20 years ago, this makes life as a traveler so much easier, because you can get really pretty reliable information about anywhere. Because before, you would have to rely, well, travel guides were always outdated by the time they were printed in the first place. So then you had government advice, which was always, and it still is always, very much on the safe side, of course. And they would probably say, like, don't go here, don't go there, be careful, blah blah blah, which obviously they have to do. I mean, I totally understand that, but to get real uh, from the ground information by fellow travelers before was much harder than it is now. So thanks to technology, basically now this is really pretty easy. And obviously, you always know that things can change overnight. I mean, I was in Tel Aviv. I left Tel Aviv on October 6th, and I was actually wondering, because my last time Tel Aviv was like, I went many times to Tel Aviv in the 90s and the 2000s. And I always saw military or police or anything. And I noticed when I was walking around on October 6th, like, wow, it's really relaxed. And I don't see any
Mm,
officers, any police, anything. It felt basically like any Mediterranean city. Um, which made me wonder, because I was like, well, the whole situation hasn't been solved. I mean, the whole Israel-Palestine conflict has never been really resolved. So I was wondering, like, how can it be so quiet? And then I left, and well, obviously the day after,
it was
the
the day
whole
after.
thing,
Wow.
yeah, because October 7th is when they invaded Israel, and the whole war started. So this only shows that if anyone would have asked me on October 6th, so how's the situation in Israel, I would have told them, like, wow, it's super quiet, it's very peaceful. And not even 24 hours later, it was the opposite. So it only goes to show that it's always like a moment situation where
Yeah.
you think things can change overnight.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, we, we
And
we
that's
were
crazy.
I was in Ukraine. Yeah, I was in Ukraine a few weeks ago, and we stayed in a hotel in Kharkiv, in eastern Ukraine, where just 10 days before, a missile hit, like, the crossroads 50 meters from the hotel. So all the buildings around the hotel, including the facade of the hotel itself, were, like, the glasses, the windows were destroyed. And the day after we left, there were more missiles coming into the city. So I mean, we were lucky, and nothing happened. Even if we had been there, it's a big city, so the chance that the missile would hit you would be pretty small. But um, so yeah, things
But
things
you
are
went
always
there
in
on
flux.
purpose.
Especially, yeah, I
You,
actually went twice this year to Ukraine, because I wanted to. Well, it's very close to where. Well, it's like, normally it's a 2 hour flight from where I live, so it's really close. And I was really shocked to see a war of this scale in Europe in 2022 or 2023
yeah.
now. And I wanted to just, first of all, to show my support to Ukrainian people, and which I really appreciate. People were really, really thankful for seeing a foreigner, and
Mm.
And it was very good to talk to them and listen to them, and also see, not just, obviously I saw destruction, but I also saw and I felt a very strong feeling of resolve and an um, amazing mentality of moving forward against all odds, because obviously Russia is a much bigger country, but still they are really determined to be free and not to be part of Russia. So they are
Mm.
doing anything they can to avoid that. They are already rebuilding destroyed areas, rebuilding houses, rebuilding roads, and that's really, I had never expected that. So I came
Wow.
back with a with a very mixed. It was not just misery and destruction, but it was also there was also definitely a pretty strong positive side as well. So it was very yeah, it was very impressive, and I believe very good to see. And I want to stress that I didn't go there for because I'm I have a death wish, or because I'm an adrenaline junkie or anything. I just wanted to go there out of curiosity and out of solidarity, and to be honest, as long as you stay away from the front line, Ukraine is a big country, so uh,
Yeah.
most things are operational. You can take night trains, you can take buses, you can sleep in hotels, restaurants are open, life goes on. It's uh, obviously apart from the areas which are bombed regularly, like near the front line, but most cities like Kiev and Lviv and Odessa and Kharkiv, they are sometimes targeted, but yeah, just people just live their lives, and they told me like the best way to give like a middle finger to Mr. Putin is to not be scared and to just uh, continue doing what we love to do. And schools are open, businesses are open, things are open. People are really resolved to just yeah try. I mean, and it's obviously in many places it's not easy. It's not as easy as it may sound now, but it's in many cases it's a struggle. But exactly because it's a struggle, it was I was really impressed by how people were dealing with the situation. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's a wonderful story. I'm happy to hear um their their positive attitude, it sounds like. So and it's interesting for me to realize, yeah, of course people are, of course they still got to eat and work and go to school and all that stuff. You can't move the whole country. Uh so yeah. Um Boris, this has been really fun hanging out with you and chatting about your travels and experience. Anything else I haven't asked you about that you want to share?
Oh, I think we touched on a lot of different subjects. So no, I think we had a yeah. Thank you for this great chat. It didn't really feel like an interview. It was more like a like a casual chat we could have had in a bar or something. And no, I don't believe I don't know. Maybe
You want to point
I
people
can leave.
where they can find you online and
Well, yeah,
your
I
book
just
and
I
stuff?
just wanted to
Yeah.
say if people are interested in following me on social media, you can probably you can best visit my website boriskester.com, where you can find links to my social media on Instagram, Facebook, and everything else, and also information about my book. As you said, The Long Road to
It's really
Colville.
good.
I which is really good. Thank you. Which I need to write National Geographic to make it one of
Yeah,
the
seriously.
100. um, I am writing a second book though.
Oh,
Yeah, so you need to subscribe to my mailing list and no, so yeah, that's probably the only thing I could add. If your listeners are interested, They can follow me, find me. They can contact me if they have any questions about travel. Because my book, basically, I don't know how you read it, but I hear back from quite a few readers that it empowers them to dare more, not just for travel, but also in general for life. That they Because the basic idea of my book is that we should I believe we shouldn't be too afraid of of our choices in life, and we shouldn't be too afraid of following our hearts to live the lives we really want to live,
Hmm.
instead of the lives that society might expect us to live.
Yeah, it was very it lit a fire in me as I was reading it. So well done.
Great.
Uh,
Well, that's good to hear. Great, great.
yeah. All right,
Well,
Boris.
thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, Derek,
Thanks so
again
much.
for having me. It was great. I hope we can catch up sometime in the future,
Yeah,
maybe
let's meet
live
up
in the
somewhere.
story.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe
Well,
you'll come my way or
yeah.
I'll go your way. We'll see what happens first.
We'll
All
stay in
right.
touch.
Farewell. Bye bye.